Good morning and welcome to the DSTV Highlights Show right here on Q, Africa's Modern Radio. My name is Tende and I'm here to let you know the interesting movies that you should anticipate for this month, the dates and times that they will all air on your favorite channels.
On the program we have a representative from Movie TV. The general manager of Movie TV is here with us. His name is Costa Mwansa. We were expecting, and we are still expecting, somebody from the Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation when we spoke to them yesterday.
Zambia is abuzz with all sorts of media. Radio stations that are either public, commercial, community, or religious. Programming varies from news, talk shows, informations, and light-hearted engagements. By the end of 2014, a total of 78 radio stations were in existence. It's a new era in the history of radio in the country.
The country is moving forward. We are all beginning to understand the roles that we're supposed to play as people who are in the media institutions. And I want to believe that this is happening in print, this is happening in radio, this is happening in television, and everybody is beginning to understand. And together, I think we can develop this industry together in that manner.
In just about every corner of Zambia is now to be found a community radio station whose programming is largely a reflection of the villages and towns within its vicinity.
On one of our projects that we called community radio for radio platform for community development, the issue that people flagged from at the community level was the policy on male involvement and how women are supposed to come with their partners to receive PMTCT counseling and also testing services and things like that.
The country can now boast of several television stations that include public, private and pay TV. Programming includes news, talk shows, information and movies.
I must say that it's been a long and rough journey for us as a private media, being the first commercially owned TV station. First of all, you operate in an environment where the whole business of TV is highly capital intensive. And even in the Zambian market, people could not believe that ordinary Zambians such as ourselves and the proprietor would sustain and manage a TV station. Looking at 10 years down the line, every business does have challenges. It's a thriving industry. We need to learn the ropes.
For the country's public broadcaster, Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation, ZNBC, this is also a time to catch up with latest developments in the television sector.
Now, this is an exciting moment for us, exciting in that we are going through a process known as digital migration. Now, digital migration came about through what is known as the radio conference that took place in Geneva in the year 2006. And this was all about managing the spectrum. And the advantage of the migration is that you only use one frequency to have quite a number of channels. So ZNBC has, for a long time, had only maybe one television channel until maybe 40 years later when we introduced TV2. But the beauty with the migration now is that we are now going to have more channels, and this will mean more opportunities.
In the print category, the country has seen some papers come on the scene and disappear, while others have weathered political and economic conditions and look set to remain a permanent feature on the Zambian media landscape.
Over the last 3 years we've been in existence, I think we have demonstrated that we are not only committed, but are determined to ensure that the media fully participates in encapsulating democracy in our own sociological, and indeed constitutional setting, because democracy is not simply a phenomenological institution. It must have deeper roots.
Daily Mail, a government-owned newspaper, is investing in critical areas of its operations to meet the new economic challenges and remain a viable entity.
In terms of reliance on one range of income sources, rather than just relying on the use of, on the selling of our newspaper, we're actually saying no, we can't rely on that, because worldwide what you're finding is that hard copy sales are actually on the decline. So the question is, if we are on the decline in terms of selling of the newspapers, what things do we need to do to make sure that our income bases are sustained? That's where we are looking at diversification. We are looking at different modes of delivering our newspaper.
Social media is another major development on the Zambian media landscape, with the number of bloggers steadily on the increase.
Personally, I started blogging in 2003, and for some time now I've seen many blogs being born. I think blogs are born like every other minute, but for Zambia, the blogosphere has really grown, especially with the people in the diaspora. They blog a lot, and I know maybe it's issues to do with internet access. But then also in terms of the media, we have set up the Zambian Bloggers Network with a membership of over 50 bloggers. We still want to see more being embraced by the traditional media. For instance, there are reporters who work for those media houses. They should have personal blogs, because that is where they document their own footprint of everything they have done.
The use of cartoons as a form of media in Zambia has been around for a while now, but its existence has been a shaky one.
You've got a population of Zambians who are tolerant. They appreciate cartooning, and really they understand the media. But what we have is an environment where cartooning cannot really survive, because media heads don't appreciate cartooning because they can't edit it, you know. And at the moment we're faced with a very dark time in our history where everybody is polarized. If you own a media institution, you're somehow polarized towards something. What compounds the polarization, either they are polarized towards politics, or they're polarized towards big business, people who are putting adverts within their publications. They can't say anything that is prejudicial to those relationships.
Political satire is another form of media Zambia has seen in her 50-year history. It's a type of media that uses humor to communicate otherwise important societal issues. But practitioners of this kind of media have sometimes faced the wrath of those they have chosen as their subjects.
If the target of the satire recognises it, they are really wounded. And of course, when it comes to political arrogance and pomposity, when a person has a very big opinion of themselves and they are made to look ridiculous, and they see people that are laughing at them, it's the one thing they cannot stand. I mean, the extremely bad-tempered Levi Manawasa, when he read a story about a stupid elephant, and in a moment of self-consciousness considered that the elephant might be himself, he exploded with rage, became superbly irrational, and made himself look more ridiculous than I had ever attempted to do in the piece I wrote about him.
The road the media in Zambia has traveled has been long and sometimes bumpy. Its origins can be traced back to pre-independence days, when this part of Africa was known as Northern Rhodesia, a colony of the British Empire. The colonial era dates back to the beginning of 1900 until the country became an independent state on the 24th of October 1964. Zambia depends largely on mining exports for its foreign currency earnings, while a significant portion of her population depend on the land for their daily food needs, either as subsistence or commercial farmers. Over her 50-year history, 3 political parties and 6 presidents have governed the country. During this period, Zambia has gone from a multi-party political system to a one-party state and back to a multi-party system again. Over the same period, the country has seen private ownership in the economy, which was later replaced with state ownership and back again to the private sector-led economy in 1991. This is the context in which the media has evolved in Northern Rhodesia to present-day independent Zambia.
I think we've come a long way, especially when you look at the fact that from ZNBC TV and radio, and the Times of Zambia and Zambia Daily Mail, and of course the National Mirror being on the scene in the 60s and 70s. Today, we boast of over 70 radio stations, community, church, and private thrown in there. So that's a very, very big achievement. We're talking of almost 10 television stations, if my memory serves me correctly. Again, that is something, it's a wonderful development. The only misgiving I have, I love the idea that we have so many outlets for people to talk about, to talk through. The only thing that I regret, or which I'm not happy with, is the way that our leadership, especially people in government, want all the media houses to behave in a certain way by towing a certain kind of path.
Some of the earliest newspapers whose records are available include the Livingstone Mail that started in 1906. Others to come later included the Northern News, founded in 1943. The Northern News, which later became the Times of Zambia, was operating from the same premises in Ndola, where the Times of Zambia is currently located. During the colonial era, there was a proliferation of newspapers largely privately owned. These included the Central African Eagle, the Central African Post, African Mail, and Mutende, the first paper owned by the colonial government. Because the editorial trajectory for most of these papers was largely in favor of the white settlers, African Life, the first paper that was ever edited by a black man, was launched.
At that time, North Rhodesia was going through a very, very serious crisis. Not only North Rhodesia, but the Federation as a whole, South Rhodesia and Nyasaland. We had only 3 more years to go before the Federal Review could take place in London in 1960 to decide whether the Federation now should be confirmed as the Dominion status, which would be like Canada, which would be like Australia and so forth. And that definitely would mean doom for any African liberation hopes whatsoever. The fortunes of the African National Congress were sinking lower and lower. And there was a division among the leadership between Harry Kumbula and Kenneth Kaunda, but nothing clearly had come out. And I realized that this was a critical moment when a voice, these people needed a voice to express exactly where the Africans want this country to go.
When Zambia became an independent nation in 1964, South Africa-based newspaper publishers, the Argus Group of companies, decided to pull out of the country, fearing that the new government may seek retribution for their previous support of white settlers. A few years into the country's independence, the Zambian government took over the ownership of the country's daily newspapers, the Times of Zambia, formerly the Northern News, and the Daily Mail, formerly the Central African Mail.
At the time, the thinking of the leadership was that it was more important for the newspapers, for the leadership to build a nation, one Zambia, one nation, and that it was important for these papers to be used to propagate government programs and objectives. And that's why they took it over. As to the merits and demerits, of course those things come later, but the intention was good.
The church has participated in the ownership of newspapers, with the most enduring being the National Mirror, which later in Zambia's history proved a force to reckon with.
When I look back, you recall that during the one-party state, people were not allowed to say their mind, as it were. But what we did was to open up some pages for people to speak through letters to the editor. And you would see and feel the mood that people were actually bottled up. And when we had 4 pages of letters to the editor at one time, and you could see people pouring out their anger, their whatever it is, and it was very exciting because people actually used to look forward to that. So what I'm saying is that we had sales. I think we were doing 12,000. One time we went up to 45,000, and we're using these sheet-fed machines. It is interesting to see that some of the people who are in the MMD, they actually used to come and sleep there waiting for the National Mirror.
Another paper was born during the transition from a one-party state to a multi-party state, the Weekly Post, later renamed The Post, a paper that has endured to this day, having been transformed into what now clearly is a permanent feature on the Zambian media landscape. Since then, Zambia has seen papers born and die, while some have shown signs of resilience.
We call ourselves People's Paper. We try and articulate those issues that really concern the ordinary man, that concern the community, that concern the broader interests of national good. And because of this, we've had some support from various quarters. People have chipped in here and there. I can tell you for a fact that some people have given us some transport, some people have helped us once in a while with newsprint and so on, because they see a value in what we are doing. So combined our own determination and the wish of the people to see us pull through, we have been able to get to where we are at the moment.
The print media has developed side by side with the broadcasting sector. Experiments in broadcasting began as early as 1939 in the Copperbelt region of northern Rhodesia. At the time, broadcasting was undertaken twice a week by the Copperbelt Amateur Wireless Club. In Lusaka, transmissions were undertaken 3 times per week for an hour following the official launch of radio broadcasting in 1941. This time broadcasting was taking place in the old airport building. In 1945, colonial authorities decided that the broadcasting station in Lusaka should focus on servicing the African population resident in Nyasaland, now Malawi, northern and southern Rhodesia, now Zambia and Zimbabwe respectively, while the Salisbury-based station would be servicing the European population. The Lusaka-based station became known as the Central African Broadcasting Corporation (CABS), while the Salisbury-based station was known as the Federal Broadcasting Service. But following the creation of the Federation, a political union that brought together the 2 territories of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, the 2 stations were amalgamated to form the Federal Broadcasting Corporation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. In 1963, the Federation was dissolved, and so was the amalgamated station. Northern Rhodesia emerged with its own named Northern Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation, or NRBC. As the struggle for independence intensified, the colonial-owned and controlled NRBC carried messages intended to discredit the cause of the freedom fighters while extolling the virtues of white minority rule. In 1964, Northern Rhodesia became Zambia, and the Northern Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation became Zambia Broadcasting Corporation (ZBC). 2 years later, it became the Zambia Broadcasting Services (ZBS). In 1987, Zambia Broadcasting Services became Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation (ZNBC) to be governed by a board of directors.
We have gone through, a metamorphosis in as far as media is concerned on the transmission part, and of course on the content part. A lot of things have gone on. Today In our news gathering, we have 2 newsrooms because we have 2 channels. But of course, in repositioning ourselves as ZNBC, we are in the process of repackaging ourselves because we have been working on our strategic plan as an institution.
When the country reverted to multi-party politics in 1991, the new government of the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy (MMD) liberalized the airwaves. Immediately followed the proliferation of radio stations, commercial, community, and religious. The history of the media in Zambia is also a history of survival against policies, laws and regulations of governments that have assumed the reins of power at different times. To help lead efforts to fight and defend press freedom, media associations that include, among others, the Press Association of Zambia and the Media Institute of Southern Africa, MISA, have and continue to mount campaigns in favor of a conducive environment in which press freedom could flourish.
At the moment, Zambia is ranked 118 in terms of media freedom, which is not a very good ranking for us as the media. And you know, we have seen a lot of persecution on journalists, media house owners, and just certain individuals who believe in freedom of expression. We have some journalists that have been taken to court. Some have been jailed before.
Press freedom campaigns got a boost when the court made a landmark judgment striking out a section of the Penal Code that has been a bone of contention for years.
We have Judge Isaac Charlie, ruling over Section 67 of the Penal Code. That is publishing news with intent to cause alarm. When he scrapped off that section, it has really given the media in this country hope that there is still will, even from the judges, to free the media in this country.
Media associations in Zambia have for many years been campaigning in favor of the establishment of an independent broadcasting authority and bring to an end government involvement in the regulation of the media.
The IBA, as an establishment, we've been on a learning process because, as you rightly pointed out, there's never been an IBA in Zambia. So this is the first, institution, the inaugural institution that has been set up. So a lot of things has been a learning process, but thankfully, the world has become more global. There've been institutions that have existed before, outside the country and within the country that may not necessarily be doing a regulation of the broadcasting sector, but indeed they're into regulation. So we've been able to benchmark, and we've been able to pick up, best, lessons.
Advocates for media freedoms and freedom of expression are not putting their guard down as more work remains ahead.
Our voice has been consistent on the need for access to information to be protected by the law. And the advocacy, we are part of the advocacy to ensure that there is a law that guarantees access to information, but also we have had a sustained voice on the need to protect freedom of expression, because sometimes you find that there is a compromise in terms of how able the media is to be objective, to bring out the issues because of certain challenges with the freedom of expression.
The media may have come this way, but observers are not happy about certain trends.
In this country, a press which is completely divided one way or another. Either it is completely for the government or it is completely against the government. And you can, even before you begin reading, just driving into town as the newspaper boys come, you can really pick your choice whether you want to hear, to read a newspaper that every day condemns the government, or whether you want to buy a newspaper that every day defends the government.
For those directly involved in the business, there are worrying trends that require urgent attention.
Democracy assumes that you have the rule of the people, for the people, by the people. But that assumes that the people can articulate themselves in a particular direction. And in our normal settings, that agenda is set by a political party. And the media must be able to articulate the various stances. If it's UPND, the media must be able to very clearly state what UPND stands for. What does PF stands for? What does People's Party stand for? And so on. So that the people are given an opportunity to determine which of these would be suitable in government. But I can assure you, as of now, that is lacking.
Those involved in training journalists equally have their own concerns.
Speaking as chairperson, if I was to talk as a chairperson of Southern African Editors Forum, then I'd say that we have very, very serious problems. Because the biggest problem we have is education. Education for me, education for colleagues on the ground, education for people in the media houses. That is where we're lacking. We have reached a situation or a level where I think that as a media fraternity, we don't command that much respect across the board because of perceptions that people have. And some of us who are in the field actually do not know what our job is or what our role is or should be. And we operate according to whoever is pulling our strings and so on. And the only thing that can overcome this is enlightenment. And we need education.
For those that have found themselves at the helm of newspapers at critical moments of history, their wish is simply that journalists stick to the truth.
I think the role of any newspaper at critical moments such as that one, I think really is to stick to the truth at any cost. Because at the end of the day, as people say, the truth is going to save you. So, and that's actually what should be happening, and also looking at the plight, especially of the less privileged. I think that's what the paper should be doing, because I mean it's very easy to dine and to go to golf with these big guns. It's very easy, but I think we must also avoid that. Even as newspaper, that we must really avoid, fraternizing, as it were, with the powers that be, because I mean you get compromised.
The media in Zambia has survived political inconvenience, physical and psychological violence, economic and legal constraints. However, observers are generally agreed that with relatively good economic prospects, coupled with the determination of media associations to protect the profession against any form of intimidation, the sector is expected to register modest growth in the short to long term, with new legislation to hedge it against abuse passed.